Ethan slumped in his chair, thumbs dancing across his phone screen as he navigated through yet another level of cosmic conquerors. The afternoon sun filtered through dusty blinds, creating golden stripes across the worn wooden floor of his grandfather's workshop. The air smelled of sawdust and varnish, a scent that had defined this space for decades. "Ethan," his grandfather called from across the room, his voice carrying the gentle roughness of age. "Could you hand me that sanding block? Just a sec," Ethan mumbled, eyes never leaving the screen. "Almost done with this level." Harold Winters, 73 years of weathered skin and calloused hands, watched his grandson with a mixture of concern and amusement. He had been tasked with keeping an eye on the boy for the summer while Ethan's parents sorted through their messy divorce. So far, the summer had consisted of Ethan hunched over various screens, while Harold tried to coax him into the world of tangible things. "You know," Harold said, wiping his hands on his apron, "that game will be there tomorrow. This piece of mahogany, though it's speaking to me today." Ethan snorted. "Wood doesn't talk, Grandpa, doesn't it?" Harold ran his fingers over the smooth grain. "Every knot tells a story. Every grain line is a chapter in the tree's life. Drought years, flood years, they're all written here." "Cool," Ethan said, clearly not listening as his thumbs tapped faster. Harold sighed and returned to his work, carefully shaping what would become the leg of a rocking chair. Minutes stretched into an hour, the workshop quiet except for the rasp of sandpaper and the occasional electronic beep from Ethan's game. "Done," Ethan finally announced, tossing his phone aside. "What's for dinner?" Harold glanced at the clock. "Not for another 2 hours. But since you've freed up your hands, come help me with this." "Do I have to?" Ethan groaned, already reaching for his tablet. "No," Harold said simply. "You don't have to do anything, but I'll make you a deal. Give me 1 hour of your time. If you don't find it interesting, I'll never ask again." Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine. 1 hour." Harold smiled and handed him a piece of sandpaper. "Start with gentle strokes, following the grain." Ethan awkwardly took the sandpaper, his movements stiff and uncertain. "Not like that," Harold guided his hands. "Feel the wood. It'll tell you which way to go." "This is stupid," Ethan muttered, but he tried again, moving more slowly this time. "Good," Harold nodded. "Now tell me, what are you working so hard to conquer in that game of yours?" "I'm trying to build the ultimate cosmic empire," Ethan said, his voice gaining animation. "I've already colonized 3 galaxies, but the Zenith Confederation keeps attacking my trade routes." "Sounds complicated," Harold remarked. "How long have you been playing?" "About 6 months," Ethan admitted. "I'm almost to level 60. "And what happens when you reach level 60? "There's level 61, Ethan said with a laugh. Harold nodded thoughtfully. "And after that, more levels, I guess. They keep adding new content. So there's no end?" Ethan frowned slightly. "Well, no, that's kind of the point." Harold picked up a small wooden box from his workbench and placed it in front of Ethan. It was exquisitely crafted, with inlaid patterns of different woods creating an image of mountains against a sunset. "I made this when I was about your age," Harold said. "Took me 3 weeks. When I finished, I gave it to your grandmother on our first date. She kept her love letters in it for 52 years. Ethan's hands stilled on the sandpaper as he examined the box. "You made this? How?" "Time. Patience. Making mistakes and starting over," Harold said. "The point is, when I finished, I had something real. Something that outlasted me and your grandmother both. But this is just a hobby for you," Ethan said. "My games are just for fun, too." "True," Harold nodded. "But when I'm gone, someone will still open this box. They'll run their fingers over the wood and think about the hands that made it." He paused. "What will remain of those 6 months you've spent conquering digital galaxies?" Ethan didn't answer, but his brow furrowed as he resumed sanding, more carefully now. As the hour passed, Harold guided Ethan through the basics of shaping wood. The boy's initial reluctance gave way to curiosity, then concentration. By the time the hour was up, Ethan had created a small, imperfect but recognizable heart from a scrap piece of pine. "Time's up," Harold said. "You're free to go back to your empire." Ethan looked at the wooden heart in his palm. Can I keep working on this instead? Harold smiled. Of course. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Ethan still played his games, but for shorter periods. More and more, he found himself in the workshop, learning to use chisels, planes, and saws. Harold taught him about different woods, their properties and histories. Ethan learned that patience wasn't just waiting, it was active attention, a deliberate choice to be present. As days passed, Harold showed Ethan the entire workshop from above, explaining the different zones, the lathe area, carving station, and finishing bench. Each space had its own tools and purpose, and Ethan began move between them with growing confidence. One evening, as the sun was setting, grandfather and grandson stood in the workshop doorway, silhouetted against the orange sky. They held their tools, surveying their day's work with quiet satisfaction, no words needed between them. Not everything went smoothly. One frustrating afternoon, Ethan split a piece of cherry wood he'd been carefully shaping for hours. His face crumpled in disappointment. "I ruined it," he muttered, ready to quit. Harold placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Every woodworker makes mistakes. The difference is what you learn from them." Over several days, Ethan watched with satisfaction as his wooden heart evolved from rough block to finished piece. Harold suggested they document the process, placing the heart at 4 different stages of completion side by side to show the transformation. Some nights, Ethan couldn't sleep, his mind buzzing with ideas for projects. One evening, well past midnight, Harold found him working under a single lamp. Instead of sending him to bed, his grandfather quietly settled into a nearby chair, dozing but keeping him company as Ethan worked through the problem that had captured his imagination. Before placing the wooden heart inside his nearly completed jewelry box, Ethan paused. He held the heart in his palm and placed it next to his grandfather's weathered hand, noticing how their craftsmanship connected them across generations, despite the differences in their skin. After a particularly intense day of work, Ethan's exhaustion caught up with him. Harold found him slumped over the workbench, fast asleep among wood shavings and tools. Instead of waking him, the old man gently draped a worn blanket over his grandson's shoulders, pride evident in his smile. By summer's end, Ethan had completed a small jewelry box. It wasn't perfect. The lid was slightly askew, and the finish had a few bubbles, but it was entirely his creation. On his last day before returning home, Ethan presented the box to his grandfather. "It's for your watch collection," he explained, "so you don't waste time looking for them." Harold laughed and accepted the gift, turning it over in his hands with genuine admiration. "You know, there's an old saying, time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time, but I think that's only half true." "What's the other half?" Ethan asked. "The time that truly matters is the time that leaves something behind," Harold said. "Something that connects you to others, or teaches you who you are." He placed his weathered hand on Ethan's shoulder. "This box will remind me of you every day. Can your cosmic conquerors say the same?" Ethan smiled and shook his head. "No, but I still like playing sometimes." "As you should," Harold nodded. "Just remember to build a few real things along the way." As they packed Ethan's bags into the car the next morning, his phone buzzed with game notifications. He glanced at it, then silenced it and slipped it into his pocket. There would be time for games later. Right now, he wanted to remember everything about this place. The smell of sawdust, the feeling of wood grain beneath his fingers, and the lessons that couldn't be learned from any screen. Ethan knew that when he returned home, things would be different. He had already sketched plans to transform a corner of his bedroom into a small workspace, where gaming posters would share wall space with his woodworking designs. His parents might be surprised, but he was eager to show them this new part of himself. "Don't waste your time, kid," Harold said as they embraced. "It's the only thing you can't get more of." "I won't," Ethan promised. And he meant it. Ethan looked back at the workshop glowing in the morning sun, knowing that something important had changed in him during this summer. The wooden heart in his pocket felt warm against his palm. a tangible reminder of lessons learned and time well spent. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe. More moments like these are just around the corner.